Hi, welcome to Concussion Podcast. I'm Nick Mercer. This is episode 97, and I'm talking to Dr. Ashleigh Kennedy of Neurovine in Ottawa. And we're going to talk today about health tech, med tech, and concussions, brain injury. And speaking of which, I will now pause for word from my sponsor, HeadCheck Health. Concussion Talk Podcast is presented by HeadCheck Health. HeadCheck Health bridges the gaps in concussion care through simple, powerful technology. Join organizations like the Canadian Football League, Track Factory Racing, the Canadian Junior Hockey League, Eastern Washington University, and Volleyball Canada, who rely on HeadCheck Health to improve communication and optimize care. Visit headcheckhealth.com for more. Okay, so Ashleigh, would you like to introduce yourself and just tell people what you guys do there, not you personally necessarily, what you've done to lead you to what you guys do at Neurovine?
Yeah, definitely. So at Neurovine, what we're doing is we are combining data science, so machine learning and AI, with wearable technology to make concussion visible for patients and for clinicians and family members who are taking care of patients. The genesis of the company really was my personal experience with a father who played professional football and had several friends who passed away from diseases related to CTE.
Right.
And so those kind of early experiences, seeing some of his friends really go downhill from repetitive, mismanaged concussions.
And you knew them before they're diagnosed or before they were showing any symptoms?
Yeah, we did. We knew them, or at least when their symptoms were mild enough that we really didn't notice.
Yeah.
And then it's a pretty quick decline for some of these football players who, were the life of the party, and then all of a sudden things just completely change.
Exactly.
So that's kind of why I got interested in brain health. I'm an athlete. That's just in my DNA.
Yeah.
And so in university, had a lot of friends on my track team who also played football, and it was the same thing for these guys. Like, they would be just the most sociable, brilliant people that I knew, and then would sustain another concussion and be out of class for weeks.
Yeah.
And then when they went back to class, never really had the chance to fully recover. So the more experiences I had like this, the more I realized how little we knew about concussion recovery and recovery post brain injury, and just started studying it. So I went to school for neuroscience, for exercise physiology, did a postdoctoral fellowship, really digging into the science behind recovery and how physical and cognitive activity supports healthy brain recovery after concussion specifically. And so that's really where the company began. And at that time, we kind of hit a new place in terms of technological advancement. So we had incredible capacity with cloud computing. Electrode sensors had advanced to the point where you could have these wearables that gave you a good signal while in, your real life, as opposed to sitting quietly in a clinic getting a recording that way.
Right.
And so the company started by developing a simple application to give feedback to the patient, getting them physically and cognitively active, and giving them kind of an indication as to when they need to slow down and take a brain break. And we've had the privilege of working with several physiotherapy clinics across Canada, and getting some really good feedback that there's actually an important opportunity to support other types of rehab that can be done virtually. So vision training, vestibular training, balance training, and some cognitive behavioral therapy. So we've got this kind of suite of technologies that we can use to support patients.
Right. Well, that's great, because I've done a lot of podcasts with Katie Mitchell. She's doing a PhD at Roy, and she's done a few with me. she definitely her own Thrive Neurosport as her company or physiotherapy. She's a physiotherapist, also
Yeah,
doing do you know of her?
I know of her. Yeah.
Yeah, she and yeah, then they do a lot of stuff about this, about vision therapy and not vision therapy necessarily, but vision and concussions and balance and so yeah, and also the psychosocial behavior, the biopsychosocial behavior, and how that's important to all of it. So sounds like you guys are in the same wavelength. That's good to hear that there are like definitely people from different disciplines, at least sort of, who are in the same. Even if you come to not too long, come to the same conclusions, or not conclusions, but same area at least.
Yeah, and I think that's the key is the multidisciplinary. So not just having one professional looking at the injury and not just having someone look at it from one perspective, but having kind of holistic groups made up of different people who can approach it from different perspectives, because it's concussion and brain injury they're such complex injuries. You can't have one clinician taking care of the injury.
Yeah, it's just like numerous different symptoms.
Yeah.
Type of symptoms that you can't just one clinician say this was happening and they ignore the other.
Yeah,
You can't do
absolutely.
it.
Yeah.
So I read on your website there's lots of the cloud and the app, which are mostly storage units and events for your information. But the headband and the heart monitor seem to be so usually talk about, I don't know, let's start with the headband. What is the headband?
So the headband reads your brain activity. It uses something called EEG to look at brain waves. And what we're trying to do is make this really invisible injury a little bit more visible to patients. So we can use some of this data that is quite complex, have it processed in the cloud, and provide a really simplistic output to the patient that can guide different types of therapies. Right now, what we're trying to do is really create a robust program that can get patients cognitively active, so they can know how hard they need to push themselves when they're going back to school or back to work. And we can give them an alert when they're starting to overexert. That's the first focus for us. But the options to move forward with biofeedback are really endless.
Yeah.
And biofeedback is using your signals from your body, brain, heart rate, things like that, to retrain your brain, to allow it to heal, to allow it to find peace when it's getting to a really anxious or kind of scattered thought pattern.
Kind of mindfulness in a scientific way, like getting your parasympathetic nervous system to work as not can't control it necessarily, because that'd be one of the point of the parasympathetic nervous system is you don't necessarily think about it, but you can at least recognize that shifts are happening in the body and what can you do about it.
Yeah, that's right. And the what can you do about it is becoming more and more understood as the biofeedback body of literature increases. So we can see unhealthy patterns, and then as a whole, we're learning how to help the patient regulate those unhealthy patterns.
And
a lot of work in anxiety, which is an important piece that we see our patients struggling with is anxiety after a brain injury.
You see that in most patients or most clients, that would you say a majority?
Yeah, so the patients that we see are not typical concussion patients. They're patients who are already having a difficult time getting back to their lives.
Like post-concussion.
They're typically people who are already in that post-concussive syndrome. And so, yes, anxiety is a common theme with those patients. Not all concussion patients. A lot of people just recover quite quickly and it doesn't really impact them. Yeah. But the patients that we see are struggling to get back to life.
Right. And I guess before we talk about more about how that is, what I was going to say, that I guess it's more like getting people who are more, say, science minded and fact minded, stats minded to think about mindfulness and think about just kind of an area that necessarily wouldn't think about. If you think like people who think like yoga and stuff is more kind of different mind, different type of personality that would go towards that than people who would necessarily be like engineers or lab technicians, like people who want that and people who want just to think about things. So it's kind of melts the two, but they're
Yeah.
getting data about your parasympathetic nervous system and all that stuff.
Yeah, you've got the biohackers who are more like the well, I wouldn't say they're the engineering type. They're biohackers are a special group of their own, but those are the people
the
that
facts, man, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Just
those are the
facts.
people, yeah, those are the people who are typically using these signals to optimize every part of their life, right?
Yeah.
But wearables can be used in well, I think they're like, from my perspective, the best use of wearables is for them to be medical devices that can support patient recovery.
Okay.
And we've got our start with biohackers, people who want optimal sleep, optimal, exercise. That's given us a good starting place, but there's a lot of potential beyond kind of the wellness space for. So sorry, actually, the medical device intrinsically needs to combine the biohacker mentality and the wellness and bring those two together.
Yeah, exactly. No,
Yeah.
So seeing which the next thing, the heart monitor, how is that important towards your post concussion or persistent concussion symptoms?
So again, heart rate can be used as a biofeedback tool to support mindfulness and meditation. The way that we use it, though, is we use off-the-shelf heart rate monitors.
Okay.
And we get our patients as physically as active as possible within the appropriate heart rate zone that supports brain recovery. And so all of this work is based on kind of the thought leader in this space, Dr. John Leddy. And his philosophy is that, and what he's seen, come out of multiple large clinical trials, is that high intensity physical activity can support recovery post-concussion. But then from a clinical perspective, what we see is that patients are fearful of being intensely physically active after a concussion. They would prefer to sit in a quiet, dark room and just let their brain heal. But the literature is clear. Intense physical activity, when it's done within a very specific threshold, can support and improve recovery. And so our technology with the heart rate is intended to push people physically, to get them walking, sweating, jogging, possibly biking, getting them active again, to allow that brain to start healing in a more efficient way. And by making this visible for them, it involves them in the process. It gives them confidence that they're not going to overexert and hurt themselves. And it gives them the extra push they need to go harder than they think they could.
Nice. So how do you determine, well, not, you don't get the detail of it, but how would you determine what is the random person's threshold?
So it's actually based on kind of the gold standard that physicians use right now. It's called the Buffalo Concussion Test.
Yeah.
And you have the person physically active on a bike or a treadmill, and you increase the intensity until they get symptoms. And then your threshold is between 60 and 80% of that place where you started to get symptoms. And so we reassess that as the patient heals. So it's a moving target that increases as you get better.
Do you do the Buffalo test there?
No, and so this is where our partnership with physiotherapy clinics has been really helpful. They're already doing it for their patients, and so they'll provide us, they can actually change the threshold as needed. They determine the threshold and put it into the application, and then we can tell the patient how their performance compares to that threshold.
So this technology goes directly to physiotherapists and their clinics, or do they go directly to patients themselves?
So now they're doing that. Now they're working with patients themselves, but in the future, we'll have a clinician web portal where where doctors and physiotherapists and occupational therapists can log into the back end. Right now, it's all patient centric.
Oh, yeah, but the technology from the product itself is that's you sell that to clinics or
No, right now it's all to the patients.
to the patient. Okay.
Yeah, but we've got partnerships with clinics who know the technology and can support patients as they onboard.
Okay, and you're saying that you were an athlete in university, just in general in life, I guess. So you talk a bit about that background, like what was your experience with concussion or with athletics, or not going to say athletics, but like sport?
Yeah. So ironically, my sport was not a concussion sport. I was a sprinter. I ran track for Canada.
Nice.
I was a 100-meter sprinter, 100-meter hurdler. But in college, being a sprinter meant that a lot of the football players would sprint with us in the spring and then would play football in the fall. So I got to know a lot of the guys who were really in the midst of, hiding their concussions during season and even off season. If they got injured, they would hide it.
Yeah.
And we on the track would see the change in their mental health. We would see the change in their physical performance because of these repetitive head injuries. I didn't get a concussion until November of this year, ironically. My family and I were building bunk beds, and a big piece of the bunk bed fell on my head. So I was the first person, as the first beta participant, to use our technology.
Oh yeah, that's good. Mm-hmm. So where did you do track?
Where
did you go to university? Where did you do not?
I went to Stanford.
Stanford.
I went to Stanford as part of their track team, their sprinting team there.
And you did your PhD there, your postdoc?
No, so that was my undergrad, PhD at the University of Ottawa, and at the University of Nantes in France. And then my postdoc was at the University of Waterloo and the Toronto Rehab Institute. The Toronto Rehab Institute is such a cool place because they're constantly innovating and putting technology in patients' hands. So that was really
I talked to actually my second episode 95 was with Laura Langer, who is a research scientist at the Toronto Rehab Institute.
Yeah.
Not with Kite really, but with the Toronto Rehab Institute, but the concussion calculator. And but they developed a concussion calculator just for doctors and physiotherapists and other health professionals now to look at and say, ask them if there's 5 questions. Then they ask them the 5 questions. They can determine if they'll be not determine, say they have a good sense of if they'll be this patient will be a long-term recovery or just 2 weeks, or not 2 weeks, but just a short recovery.
Yeah. Prognosis is a huge area of research right now, and we'd love to be able to use our data to support some of the research that's going on with prognosis, because if you can identify people that will suffer and need intervention, if you can identify those people early, you can really shorten the recovery process. And prognosis is such a hard area to understand with brain injury.
Well, it's a good segue actually. So what are you guys working on now that you think is going to be, or do you want to work on soon? That's going to be, that you think will be, say, a game changer, like important?
Yeah, so I think the real game changer will be connecting clinicians with their patients and using the data that we're collecting to help clinicians make data-driven decisions. It's such a subjective injury. And so if we can make the injury a little more visible to clinicians and to patients and use our technology to connect them and to connect all of the treating clinicians together so everyone's on the same page for that patient. One of the most frustrating experiences after my concussion was retelling my story to every specialist that I saw, and not having any coherence between those
So
providers.
what were your symptoms, your personal symptoms after your November concussion?
So I had a lot of vision and vestibular issues and auditory issues. So I've got tinnitus, I've got vision, like lingering vision issues, all of which I've had a lot of support with. We've got a concussion focused clinic. I'm sure they would love to talk to you too, Nick. 360 concussion.
Sorry.
360 concussion's like the leader
Okay.
in Ottawa. So
Yes.
they've been good at supporting a lot of the recovery pieces, but you're still your own advocate. You're still telling your story over and over again to every aspect.
I guess that's kind of like what you presume, you know, how much time you spent in the health system in the States when you were down there. But the States and Canada, obviously very different health systems, and honestly, very different there. Still, you know, doctor health professionals, but you know, so do you find that there's a seem to be more, you know, like focused on getting patients to know what they want to know, but also what they need to know, which is kind of more of a, I don't know how to say it, but it's different approach to health to medicine, is in like just what you think you should know or you want to have the right to know, as opposed to what you actually do need to know and maybe you didn't think of it before. So like your heart rate or your EEG, many patients didn't think of that before, but it's very important. They do need to learn that stuff. Do you find that to translate that is to convey that to patients is something that's challenging or
it is challenging, and again, that's why our clinic partners have been so helpful, because they can support some of the education that patients need to go through to understand how to really optimize the recovery process. And so, we've certainly got a teaching component as well as the technology that we've developed. But concussion care can be so expensive in the US. To see all the specialists you need to recover properly can be incredibly expensive. So if you've got patients who can optimize the recovery and know a little bit more about their brain health before going in to see all the slew of specialists,
that costs a lot.
Save some money.
Insurance is not necessarily gonna be that helpful because you gotta pay premiums on that stuff too. So
depending on where you get injured, right?
Cost you the back door kind of thing. They agent for money that way. But what was your PhD on? Your PhD title for your PhD, your thesis?
So I was looking at the impact of neuromuscular fatigue on biomechanics. So when your brain is exhausted, how does that impact your body's ability to execute tasks?
That is very important for me. Very interested in that because my brain does get tired. Obviously,
Oh, I get that. And that's we're trying to prevent that state of kind of foggy murkiness for our patients, getting them active, but kind of preventing that cognitive overexertion.
But just you're focusing, your focus was cognitive, as in when your brain gets tired, how do you react cognitively, or do you say tasks like physically? For example, I swim a lot, and I did like last week I did a swim that was called Try the Tickle, which is the tickle between the ferry route in Newfoundland and this island that's offshore, like 5K, and people do the full 5K, but this year it's too windy. It's not important. It's not as important, but it's not part of this podcast. So if I know I can do the 5Ks, but just to swim a lot and play water polo and stuff. So I mean the 5K strength wise is there, but endurance wise is there too. But matter of executing the task of swimming and the waters of the ocean maybe are a bit obviously a lot more difficult than say a pond or a lake or a pool. And so do you look at how your body and your mind gets tired, your body is too, how you're physically active, like your muscles react to?
I did it both ways. So extreme physical fatigue and how that impacts your ability to function mentally.
Okay.
and then extreme cognitive or mental fatigue and how that negatively impacts your ability to perform, to stay balanced, to execute complex fine motor tasks. So I did it both ways.
That is very interesting, especially for me. I've definitely talking more about that. That's just fascinating stuff. And yeah, so right now you are working on prognosis capabilities, or you would like to?
We'd love to find a partner to use some of our data to dig into that prognosis question.
Okay.
We're not doing it internally,
No.
but we're acquiring tons of data from our patients, and so these are research participants for the most part who are eager to use their data to help other patients. And so, yeah, finding someone to work on the prognosis question with would be really interesting for us.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. Head off.
Oh, no, that's it.
Okay. Well, I guess if you have any questions for me or any more statements, things I've missed that you'd like to discuss on the podcast.
I'd love to know, did you get into like swimming out in the open after?
Definitely not. Well, not actually, no. I guess not. I was severely bad. I did no concussion. I had severe brain injury in 2003, and I played volleyball before that. So, and I usually just the odd times in lakes and ponds. It was fun, but like there's never any sense of really doing it. But I started in the January of 2003 in Victoria. So it was, the weather was still good. Victoria, BC. And but so we swam in as of like late May, I guess. Late May, June, July. We swam in this lake. So I was swimming lakes before I do the last real memory of a physical activity, except for the bike ride that led to my brain injury, which I remember just the idea of it. So I don't remember it necessarily. Was a 3K swim race we did. I think it was the week before. And on Sunday, there was like 5K and 3K. I did 3K. It was all open water, just a little lake, which is, they call that a lake, but the pond swimming out was bigger than that, but it's called ponds. I'm not sure that the terminology works, but obviously the ocean is, different animal totally. But I love being open water, something that's like nature. Again, you're saying that the mindfulness aspect of it, again, involved getting in the nature and all stuff, being outside. I just like it so much more. For example, last night I played, but I could still water polo outside in a lake on the same pond as Matt. So we did that. That was fun, but I'm an ordinary, but I used what I could do.
Yeah. But it's awesome that you are getting out and swimming like that. Like it's such an encouraging thing to hear and so helpful for your brain health.
It is. Actually, about that was just we should keep talking about this, but swimming is a lot of anaerobic exercise. Does that affect the your biofeedback in a new way? That's for concussion and brain injury people.
Sorry, like anaerobic
aspect of just swimming. So you're holding your breath for I know just a stroke or two, but
it's unclear. There's so much of this, the impact of exercise on brain health that's still not well understood. We just know the tip of the iceberg. And I know there are people who know more about that than I do, but it is still very, very new and very exciting to look at that.
And is your heart rate monitor, or which is you said you start all the heart rate monitors, but say your headband, if they're not, you can't wear them in the water.
So a lot of the heart rate
you can read it. So
a lot of the heart rate monitors you can wear underwater.
Okay.
And it would just be, it's an interesting, actually, that's an interesting problem to solve is giving you an alert when you are underwater. Because our alerts are all on cell phone right now.
Yeah.
But that would be an interesting problem to solve.
Well, I know there are headphones you can wear headphones you are underwater, so
yeah,
it wouldn't be too complicated to do that.
Yeah, as long as you weren't too far out in the pond. You need your cell phone.
Oh yeah, right. They have like a little you can listen to music. Like I actually last weekend when I did the 1K swim, there was a woman there who was showing us she always sick. I was sing with the music, and she shows us little tiny iPod, sorry,
Yeah.
MP3 device that she stored and she hooked up so she could just listen to music without being hooked up anything on shore.
Cool. Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It's not an area that like I haven't really worked with swimmers before. I think that's another cool technical problem to think about.
Cool. Well, I really, trying to into the weeds about this, but most of your where can people find your clinic online or in person or?
So everything's online right now, especially with COVID. Everything's done virtually. We've got research assistants that can get you onboarded through Zoom. So you just go to our website, www.neurovine.ai.
Is AI stand for artificial intelligence?
Oh, sorry, pardon me?
Does AI stand for artificial intelligence?
It does, yeah, AI.
What is AI you use in your, how do you obtain that?
So all of our machine learning algorithms
are classified.
Well, yeah, that's kind of the core of what we do is we use data science, mostly machine learning, but looking at AI driven insights for clinicians to support their decision making.
That's so cool. So Neurovine.ai, and you found me on Instagram. Heather did. Hey Heather, found me on Instagram. So what's your Instagram? Your Instagram or your Facebook or you're both? But I mean,
do you want to pull those out, Heather?
Heather, you can.
Sure. Yeah, at Neurovine AI _AI.
Neurovine_AI for both for Facebook and Instagram.
So for Instagram
Heather can.
And so we have all accounts. So sorry. It's Neurovine_AI for Instagram.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, well then, I'll just include those in the description that I do as well. So if there's anyone, because that was spotty if I hear that necessarily. So but I will definitely include that in the description. So now we're recording this on the Friday, and this will be out on the Tuesday on August 24th. So thank you all for listening, and well, thank you Ashleigh and Heather who just chimed in at the end that set this all up. So thank you so much for being part of this podcast, and this is just fascinating stuff. It's interesting.
Thanks for having us, Nick. It's really nice chatting with you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
The music at the beginning of this podcast is by Ben Sound, www.bensound.com.